So, what can people expect from the show?
Not Sammy Davis Jr. No one can get there. No, what can they expect from the show? Yeah, just a little bit of old-fashioned showbiz, really. Something you don't see anymore in the business. Most of what was a totally natural, what would you say, profession. There's nothing more natural than someone standing up in a room and entertaining.
Yeah.
And that can happen anywhere. It happens in pubs all over the country every day. Someone comes in, very funny, stands up and entertains, the people in there all day. Some people will find it annoying.
Yeah.
Most people will be laughing. Mm-hmm. Most people want to laugh, but they won't.
Yeah.
That's what it is, and it started, from there. And what we have now is everyone's trying to create show business. They're trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
But you can't reinvent one man standing on a stage and entertaining. And I wanted to sort of strip back all the hype and, all the other stuff that has been added to the basic performance, and to say, hey, let's go back to, sitting around a fire, and hunting and, all that kind of stuff, man's natural kind of habitat. So, it was kind of just stripping away all the unnecessary things that have been added to the profession. I don't have to phone a friend. I don't have to, do a sob story on video in the foyer before I come in, just in case I'm crap.
Yeah.
But you feel sorry for me because, I've just been evicted from my house or something. No one wants to know that. Mm-hmm. I mean, they just want to go in there and see if they hear their favourite song. Yeah. Maybe what I've found in most of the shows is that there's been loads of people who've been in the theatre that have actually seen Sammy Davis perform live. Yeah. On every venue, there's been at least one person that has seen Sammy Davis live, or one guy was there at 11 years old with his parents and came to see the show and was like, I just got transported back to 11 years old in the 60s at the London Palladium. Yeah. For me, that's why you do shows like this. As Bruce Forsyth said about Sammy Davis Jr., when he saw him, that, he had to make a career change and realised that he needed to step his game up. And two, he said his best moment in show business was working with Sammy Davis Jr. Yeah. End of. And what did he do? He presented the biggest light entertainment show on television. That light entertainment show, when Bruce was a performer, was called Variety. Yeah. It's now called light entertainment because they say variety's dead. Mm-hmm. And, it certainly wasn't. Yeah. And it certainly isn't. It's not dead. It's just there's no avenue for it. And Strictly is the only avenue for anything remotely close to doing a variety show.
Yeah, even the Royal Variety's changed.
The Royal Variety shows, it's like it's not even an alternative show now. It's just anyone who's someone who who's you can make a dog roll over and eat chewing gum. Or, you can go on the Royal Variety show. Mm-hmm. I mean, back in the day, you think of the people that were doing variety shows were, huge stars. Huge stars. People who were at the top of the game and, people who were snapping at their heels underneath them, I mean, you think you have, Norman Wisdom, Freddie Parrotface Davis and all the big comedians, Jimmy Tarbuck, Bruce Forsyth, they were all on the same show. What are you going to do? You can't come on and do... John Smith from Huntingdon comes on to sing his version of Rod Stewart's Do You Think I'm Sexy, on a talent show. Yeah. He can't do 2 hours in a theatre like this. So, the thing is, for me, I every time you go on a stage, there's a lot of luggage that comes with it. Yeah. You look at the people who've been on this stage, there's probably going to be megastars that have trod these boards. I mean, I don't know who they are yet. I might have a look soon, but there's been a lot of serious entertainers on this stage. And, you know, if you're going to come up there and say you're part of that community, you need to be, you know, doing something that relates it to that industry. And I think, you know, it's not impersonation of Sammy. It's not a play. It's just me telling his story.
Yeah.
As Bruce Forsyth said,
Yeah.
he feels that far too many people have forgotten Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
and called him the greatest entertainer in the world, as that the world's ever seen. And so does everybody else. You know what they say in it? When you go into a room, don't look at the stars. Look at who the stars are looking at.
Yeah.
And if Sammy walked into a room, I can promise you there would only be one star in that room.
Yeah. Everyone would turn their heads.
Well, I mean, that's what happened. If you look at his life, you can see the people that were around him.
Yeah.
And, you know, well, if Bruce Forsyth is Mr. Entertainment, and he said the greatest achievement in his career was working with Sammy Davis Jr., so what does that make Sammy Davis Jr.?
Yeah.
If Mr. Brucey is Mr. Showbiz, he's the man that, you know, painted the Mona Lisa of stage. And then he went, my goodness, look at that guy.
Yeah.
I need to go back to the drawing board. That's what he said. Yeah. So, and, you know, who am I?
Yeah.
I can only, as Bruce, you know, would have done. I mean, this is the show Bruce Forsyth could have done. Yeah. Because they were friends, lifelong friends. Yeah. And it was Bruce that introduced him in 1960. Yeah. It was him that introduced Sammy. He was the host on the Royal Variety Show that in front of the Queen, when you're only supposed to take one bow. Yeah. You can get your head chopped off for taking more than one bow. It's treason. Bruce had to call Sammy on 3 times. Yeah. Before the audience would let him carry on. So that tells you everything. Yeah. And then you know what he did after that? What did he do? Went and did a show at the Pigalle. He just headlined the Royal Variety, met the Queen, see you later, went off to the Pigalle and did his show. Because he was actually there to do his show, 45 shows at the Pigalle in Piccadilly. And then he did the Royal Variety Show, headlined the Royal Variety Show just as a matter of fact. You know, it wasn't a big deal to just go off and do, you know, sort of whatever it was, 20, 30 minutes at the Royal Variety Show and then go and do another act. Yeah. So there ain't no one doing that around here. Yeah.
So is that what inspired you to do the show?
Well, I've always, the first ever show I did a Sammy Davis number from Sweet Charity called Rhythm of Life. Yeah. That was the first ever solo I did. And what happened was Dickie Henderson, who was a variety artist of the day, he was like the Frank Sinatra of England. And his musical director said, "Oh, you should do Golden Boy." I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's a musical." And that was when it was Sammy Davis that starred as Golden Boy. And he did it at the Palladium in London as well as on Broadway. And that's when I started, like, who is this guy? Yeah. And then that's basically what happened. I just started to learn more and more about Sammy Davis Jr. And then that's been a kind of, you know, an inspiration. If you're going to be a song and dance man, which what I was, where are you going to look? To the greatest. Who are you going to look to? Yeah. There ain't no one out there today. Who's a song and dance man out there today?
Couldn't name one.
But that's showbiz. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me there's no showbiz in England?
Yeah, but there is.
But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Can you see how the ridiculousness of it is? You know, that's showbiz. Yeah. That means something. Yeah. That showbiz isn't just a saying. Yeah. All that jazz, you know, and the movie. Yeah. It's about Bob Fosse, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So Bob Fosse was the one that directed and choreographed the number that I did first in Sweet Charity. Mm-hmm. Rhythm of Life, Sammy Davis Jr. And what does Bob Fosse in the movie, in all that jazz, in the morning when he looks in the mirror, he goes, "It's showtime, folks." Yeah. You know, that's basically what it is, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, that's show business. Yeah. He gets up in the morning and, you know, he's got to go and entertain. Mm-hmm. And they're all flawed characters. Yeah. They're all flawed characters because that is their life. Yeah. That is their life. It's a difference. The difference between people like Sammy and Bruce and, you know, Bob Fosse and all the rest of these guys is that it's not a profession to them.
Yeah.
It's their life. So when you go on and make up shows to pretend to do show business and to do an imitation of what you're saying that ain't show business.
Yeah.
Not on telly. That is not show business. This is show business.
Yeah.
You know, the grease paint, the smell of the grease paint, and, you know, the lonely guy in the dressing room waiting to go on, and all that's show business. And, you know, that's the industry I came up in.
Yeah.
You know, when I was doing the Lena Zavaroni series as a dancer in the late 70s, she was singing live in the TV studio, mate, and dancing and choreographed and all that. That was a different, you know, that's the difference. She weren't on stage miming to a CD or, you know, these are serious. Lena Zavaroni showbiz.
Yeah.
She had her first #1 record when she was 10 years old, and she came off of a talent show on telly. You know.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's basically what showbiz is all about.
Yeah. And after people have seen the show, what will they be thinking when they're going home, when they're driving home? What's like the message of it all?
Well, the message is the story of Sammy Davis Jr. is really he became the greatest entertainer in the world through adversity.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he had mummy paying to go to drama school and then did panto and with mummy, and you know that's not showbiz. That's being in a show.
Yeah.
Those people don't live. They need that. Sammy Davis and his father and all that. They were performing to eat.
Yeah.
You know, they weren't staying at the Hilton or you know, they weren't there. They were working to eat. You know, their car was $90, living and working and traveling around the country. You know, Sammy's first show on stage was at the age of 3.
Yeah.
Never. Do you know Sammy Davis never spent a day of his life in school? No, that was a different thing. They were living.
Yeah.
You know, as John Bubbles said, there's a bit on this show when John Bubbles said, he said, you know, in that I only do this to stop from starving. And did you know John Bubbles was on the first ever BBC broadcast from Alexander Palace in the 1930s? See, they wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
Him, Buck and Bubbles, it was an act.
Yeah.
And they were on the first ever broadcast from on the BBC ever in England. Why? They have to have showbiz.
Yeah.
And those acts were phenomenal acts, you know.
Yeah.
So they wanted people to see this stuff, you know. You could now see it. You didn't have to go to a little vaudeville theatre or a little burlesque club or after hours drinking place, you know, to go and see the local act. You can now see it on telly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that again is these people were brought onto these things because no one else could do what they do.
Yeah.
You know, and that for me was you're never going to be as good, but it's having the drive to try and get as closer to him that he was last year.
Yeah.
And it's when these kids come into show business, who are they looking at?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know who they're looking at. I would love to. Is there a Shirley MacLaine out there? Is there a Cheetah Rivera?
I don't think there is.
I mean, is there a Judy Garland? Where are they? I don't know. I mean, so you know, they have not. It's not that they're around. I mean, you know, right now you got Renée Zellweger doing Judy Garland, right? Why? Yeah. People want to hear these stories about these people now. Yeah. And that you're going to see a lot more stuff about the you know, showbiz people, more about you know, Clark Peters from The Wire is actually working. He was on Michael Ball's radio show talking about his directing a Sammy show written by Leslie Bricusse, who wrote loads of Sammy songs. In fact, I'm singing about 3 Leslie Bricusse songs in this show. And he's got a script out there about Sammy, and in Clark Peters is workshopping that now.
Yeah, and everyone wants to hear the stories.
Well, who are you going to listen to?
Yeah.
You know, the background of, it's all very well. I mean, competitions are good to go to, and Sammy Davis's father was, he won a Charleston competition, and that's how he got into vaudeville. It was just a competition that he won.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Yeah.
But once you've done that, you've got to, then he was then on the road for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
It was a lifestyle. It's not a profession to them. It's a lifestyle.
That's how they eat, pay bills, everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Your career, feeding your kids.
Yeah.
So that's why Sammy was on the road with him from the time he was 3 years old, performing.
What's the most interesting thing about Sammy?
The most interesting thing about Sammy was, what would you say the most interesting thing about him is? I think the most interesting thing about Sammy is the way that people who were so far above him, socially, politically,
Still looked up to him.
they were so far above him. These are people that didn't have to look down the ladder. But the people in the business that knew what it was, Bruce Forsyths, the biggest show on television, Ed Sullivan, Matt, once they saw him, it was like they got drugged.
Yeah.
They got drugged because that's why they came into the business. They wanted to be that good. And they wanted that good round them so that they could feed off of it.
Yeah.
And so that's what you'll find. You'll find when you look at Sammy's life, why would Clint Eastwood be at his 60th?
Yeah.
Why would George Bush be there?
Mm-hmm.
Why would Michael Jackson be there?
Yeah.
Why would Eddie Murphy be there? Why would, it goes on. And did you know that Sammy Davis taught Clint Eastwood how to quick draw?
No.
Did you know he was the fastest drawer in Hollywood?
No.
With 6 shooters? Did you know he did it in his act while he was singing?
Nope.
Right, there you go. That's why Clint Eastwood was at the 60th anniversary.
Yeah.
Because he was not getting no work. He couldn't get inverted commas shot in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So he went and said, I'm going to Europe to go and make films. And of course, that's where his career started, the legendary, and Sammy taught him how to quick draw.
Yeah.
So when you go and see Outlaw Josie Wells next time and you see him shoot those 4 soldiers, you go down, hey, thank you, Sammy.
Yeah, Sammy did that.
Yeah, you did know John Wayne gave him one of his hats from his movies.
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
So there's a lot of interesting
Man,
facts
you
with
go
him.
and look at the people who were friends with Sammy and ask yourself, why?
Yeah.
Why? Got James Cagney over there.
Yeah.
Why you want to be Sammy's friend?
Uh-huh.
Mickey Rooney was the person who gave Sammy his break, not Frank Sinatra, like everyone thinks.
Yeah.
They don't know the story.
Yeah.
It's Mickey Rooney that gave Sammy his break.
So do you think it's your duty to tell the story of him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that Sammy laid this road for Frank Sinatra laid it. No, Frank Sinatra introduced himself to Sammy. It wasn't the other way around.
Yeah.
And they weren't. Sammy wasn't subservient to him because they were on the same show.
Yeah.
Frank was the singer in the Tommy Dorsey band, and the Will Mastin trio, which is Sammy, his father, and the creator. They were on the bill they weren't under the bill, they were on the bill.
Yeah.
And backstage, this skinny guy came over and introduced himself as Frank Sinatra. Sammy was 15 when he met Frank Sinatra. So, I don't know what the influence was.
Yeah.
So why are you saying hello to a 15-year-old? I mean, there must be something you saw and you went, wow. Okay, so there you have it. But before that, it was Mickey Rooney.
Yeah. And is there any similarities between Sammy and yourself?
Only that we do the same thing, which is to sing, dance, and act,
Yeah.
and our colour, obviously. We're from obviously different backgrounds as far as culturally. I mean, he's got his mother was Hispanic as well, so he was certainly a different cut of cloth
Yeah.
than the average entertainer. And you know what? It's like, what couldn't he do?
Yeah.
What
Could
couldn't he do?
anything, couldn't he?
He couldn't.
Could even teach.
If
Played
you
the
were going to
drum.
come into show business and you wanted to be in musical theatre or song and
Yeah.
dance man, who would you look at? That's the simple question.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you look at? Because if you asked Bruce Forsyth, he'd say Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah.
And if you asked all of those, they'd say Sammy Davis. It's not just one person said he was
Yeah.
the greatest
Not just
entertainer
you,
ever lived.
that's
It's
it, that's
hundreds of them. And it's
Yeah.
not Joe Public. It's people who are in the business that say it.
And high people in the business as well.
Biggest.
Yeah.
Mate, he was hanging out with Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra did not start the Rat Pack.
Yeah.
Frank was just another one of the people who
Yeah.
went to Humphrey Bogart's house.
Yeah.
That is where the Rat Pack started,
Yeah.
and it was Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Holmby Hills Rat Pack, and Holmby Hills was Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart's house, and that's where it happened.
Yeah.
You had all kinds of people in the Rat Pack that no one didn't even know about. Before you saw those four guys, 10 years before that, there was the Rat Pack.
Yeah.
You see, the other they were known as the new Rat Pack.
Yeah.
Frank didn't start the Rat Pack,
No.
but it's so much information out there that's so wrong. It's not, it needs to be
Yeah.
told properly.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra did not start the Rat Pack. He was a member of the
Yeah.
Rat Pack.
Yeah.
When Bogey died, he became, the chairman of the board,
Chairman.
inverted commas.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
But that was a new creation. That wasn't the Rat Pack that,
Yeah.
Renee Zellweger, Judy Garland. That's Sammy's friend. Sammy bought Judy Garland's old house.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest movie right now? Judy Garland,
Yeah.
Sammy's friend. Why do you think Liza Minnelli was in the tours with them?
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, none of this. If you actually see, you can see
Oh,
where.
yeah. It's easy to see.
You can go and see photos of him and Judy doing, we're a couple of swells
Yeah.
as tramps. I mean, it's so much information out there. So that's why I wonder, what are these showbiz editors doing? Why don't they know that? They're supposed to be editing. They're supposed to be the know-all of the showbiz. And I'm saying, well, you should know that.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying to you. The information is not getting
Passed on.
passed on down the generations.
Yeah.
And what it's become now, we've settled for mediocrity.
Yeah. If that.
And that's basically what's happened in the
Yeah.
industry. Any Tom, Dick and Harry can be in show business today.
The dog can.
But the dogs have got more starring roles. I've never had a number one dressing room, but I bet you that dog does when it's on telly.
Yeah.
He's going to have a dressing room.
Yeah.
But I worked with Bernie Winters and Schnorbitz, so that was the first dog I saw in an act. Because his brother went to what? Went to Las Vegas for the big time. They were in Variety, weren't they?
Yeah.
I was in Panto with Bernie Winters. I was in Panto with Norman Wisdom.
Yeah.
Jimmy Tarbuck I worked with. When I came out work, I was working with variety artists who were real showbiz people,
Yeah.
And they did everything. The show must go on.
Yeah.
I remember I'm working in the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
Dickie Henderson. He left the Isle of Wight, whatever it was, 6, 7 in the morning, went over to London,
Yeah.
got on the ferry, went to London, buried his mother, and was back on stage in the Isle of Wight at 7 o'clock, tap dancing and singing.
Yeah. That's your business.
That's showbiz.
Yeah.
Anybody who comes into this business thinking it's just a laugh where you go and get a payday and I can send a few Instagrams, and that's not show business.
Yeah.
That's not someone who's living, breathing
Yeah.
show business. as I said, there's show business, the profession.
Yeah.
There's show business, the fake, and there's show business, the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it depends on which one you think is most honourable.
Yeah.
But I know which one I do.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and what's your career highlight?
My career highlight is having the balls to do this show.
Yeah.
And that's an honest truth. You know, for us, the show is still evolving because just like Sammy's act, if you listen to him, he wanted to always make it better. He always wanted to look for the next level, and I think that once you think you've reached the end of that, that's when you got a problem.
Yeah.
If I sat here and thought, this is it, this is the show, I'm settling for that when I should be coming in and thinking, how can I make it better?
Yeah.
And that's that's just. This is. I mean, I've had so many different highlights as far as work and but none of it gets as scary as this.
Yeah.
Because of the subject matter.
Yeah. The subject.
The other stuff is characters that I've created.
Yeah.
I didn't create this character.
Yeah.
I have to tell the story of this
Correct,
character.
You have to get it right. You have to do justice.
And do justice to his life story and his legacy and all of that, and put people straight on a lot of stuff that people think is one way and it's not. Sammy and Frank's life wasn't always rosy at all.
Yeah.
It wasn't rosy at all like people think. No one's life is.
Yeah.
They have their own disagreements. They have their own, nobody is pally 24/7. And anyone that looks at their best friends will say, if you haven't fallen out with your friend, you don't know if they're your friend or not.
Yeah.
Because how you will find out whether they're your friend or not is what they do after the argument.
Yeah.
And how they act afterwards. Mm-hmm. That's when you'll know if you've got a good friend or not.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is about with Sammy. He craved those friends and those parties. He didn't like being alone. He hated sleeping. He didn't want to miss anything, and that was his drive. He wanted to please everybody. That was his downfall, is wanting to please everybody. But what he should have been doing is pleasing himself every now and then.
Yeah.
But hey. Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. And we'll have to talk about Red Dwarf, but when you joined Red Dwarf, did you expect to get the reaction that it did?
When I joined it?
Yeah.
When it first came out?
First came out, did you expect to get the reaction?
Well, no, I'm on record as saying that this will either be the best show ever made or the biggest pile of poo ever made.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to say where it is, but all I know is that we've been doing it for 31 years.
Yeah.
And how many people can say that?
Yeah. And is it coming back anytime soon?
It's already been announced, mate.
Oh, has it?
Yeah. It's been announced already.
What is it?
A 90-minute special.
And when will that be coming out?
We haven't filmed it yet. No, but that's what I'm saying. It's out in the press already.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's been announced.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. They just did an advert for the AA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, and we were negotiating the series before we did the advert.
Yeah.
So, and we've already shot the second advert. The first radio one for the AA already just won an award.
Yeah.
We just did one radio ad, it won an award. So they brought us in, we just did another one, and then we've just done. Well, the first one's been on about 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's a 3-year deal though. You see.
Oh right. Yeah.
We are the face of the AA.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, that's from the Red Dwarf. I mean, what is it? The best show? Is 8.5 million viewers on BBC Two.
Yeah.
Highest viewing figure on BBC Two. Top Gear 4 million. Friends 4 million. Red Dwarf 8.5 million.
Tell you something.
It tells you 31 years.
Yeah.
So hey, but we're resting on one's laurels you know, what you got to remember is the word Red Dwarf on my CD takes up 1.5 inches on the A4 piece of paper. My CV's about 3 A4s.
Yeah.
So, and it's not in bold,
Yeah.
and it's not written bigger than the rest, because a true entertainer puts 110% into all of his characters.
Yeah.
So for me, if someone loves Red Dwarf, that's great. But for me, I only judge him by how good did I nail that character.
Yeah.
And I look at Red Dwarf, I look at Death in Paradise, I look at MI High, I look at Story Makers, I look at Maid Marian and Her Merry Men, etc., etc., etc. And I judge how well I've done by how well that character was received and how well that character is seen. You know, and feedback is important because you know they. If I said I'd never had a negative comment about my characters, would that be braggadocious?
Yeah.
But it's the truth. I can't help that.
Yeah.
But you know, I put the work in. I lost sleep, you know, doing those characters, and I put the work in to make sure that they were credible.
Yeah.
And that's the number one word.
Yeah.
When you stand up in front of that camera, or you get on that stage, you have to ask yourself, and the producers and everybody else around them, and they have to be honest, and they say, "Is this credible?"
Yeah.
What do you think? Now you look at the TV now. Is it credible? Is showbiz credible? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that what you
Just
teach
change
kids to go?
that,
When you go into showbiz, this is what you've got to achieve? No, because they shouldn't be told that.
Yeah.
They should be told about you need to nail your character. If you're a presenter, you need to do it. It should be about what you do, not what the show is.
Yeah.
Because you know, anyone that can hold a tune can go on telly and sing a song. I mean, really, you know, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You can go to karaoke shows every night and see people nailing some songs, you know, nailing it.
Yeah. Me.
But can they get up and do 2 hours of the same thing?
Yeah.
And for people to say, "Oh, right, so yes, it's lovely singing, but," you know, so you've always got to be ready for the but.
Yeah.
And so when you create something, you've got to make sure that the word "but" cannot be mentioned.
Yeah.
And that's where that's only the start.
Yeah.
Because, you know, then you've got to get everything else right. But first and foremost, you've got to stop them from saying, "but,"
Yeah.
you know. So that's the challenge.
Yeah. And you recently left Death in Paradise. What sparked that decision?
7 years of supporting, you know, three different detectives. I'm very much get itchy feet because the character really. There's nothing really left for that character to do in that guise. You know, you look at the cat and you look at him. They're in two different rooms. They're not even in the same room as characters. You know, and to make the cat credible, he's a fantastical character. He's not even real.
Yeah.
Well, why did they think he's real? And why did they talk about him as if he's a real man? Oh, the way the cat does this and the way the cat does that, and it's like he's just a fictional character, fantastical from a sci-fi. But they need to believe him.
Yeah.
And they need to believe Dwayne.
Yeah.
And he's American, and that one's a Caribbean. And they need to believe the guy in MI High who speaks with an RP accent, and Story Makers, and on and on and on. They have to believe him.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I work towards making people believe that these guys are real.
Yeah. And how does, this is the last question, how does stage differ from working on TV programs?
On TV, you can do a retake.
Yeah.
On stage, you can't. You're on your Todd. So this is, again, if the sound system breaks down, what are you going to do? You just let the audience sit there, or you're going to entertain them.
Yeah.
Now, it's not, "Oh, let me think about it."
Yeah.
So, who can do it? Who can do that? You'll never know until you are in that situation, and then we're going to find out who's show business and who ain't.
Yeah.
because showbiz will survive.
Yeah.
For instance, at yesterday's show, my mic came off. Had to get hand mic, do that. Steve's on, changing the mic, a couple of gags, carry on with the show.
Yeah.
Stand at the bar and he's doing my mic while I'm talking. So, you know, it's do you stop the show, or do you carry on? It's the show must go on.
Yeah.
And you know, that's basically what I do.
Yeah. And do you have any other projects coming up?
Yeah, I was gonna do the Richard Pryor story, because it's very, you know, again, Sammy Davis was part of my kind of inspirations for the cat. He was one of the people that I thought was a cat, and I used you know, that swagger.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor was also part of that character. Richard Pryor's pretty much all his facial expressions and his attitude is Richard Pryor. So, you know, Richard Pryor's, oh my God, that's another life story. It's there's a great photo with Sammy and Richard Pryor together. It's so crazy. Richard Pryor's crazy.
Yeah.
I want to do that story. I don't want to tell his story like I told Sammy's one.
Yeah.
But that one ain't gonna have no songs.
Yeah.
It'll have comedy sketches.
Yeah.
I'll do some of his famous comedy sketches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is different. But
Which is hardcore.
Yeah.
It's Richard Pryor, another man. He changed the game. Go and ask any stand-up if he's better than Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Anyone you want, pick one. In England right now, pick a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
No, yeah, just pick a random one.
John Bishop.
Go and ask John Bishop if he's better than Richard Pryor. When I say that, you're not comparing their style of comedy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, as a comedian,
Yeah.
whatever, you know, I'd like to see Richard Pryor come on after him, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Now, it's up to them if they think they're better. It's good, because, you know, the proof is always going to be in the pudding.
Yeah.
But for me, as a layman and a member of the public, that of all the comedy stand-up acts I've seen, Richard Pryor live in concert is the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I met the guy who one of the producers on Blade 2 was one of the producers of that film.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And that's all we've got time for today. But thank you for joining me.
Thank you. See you later, TV land.